Hi there, my name's Colin and this is the Action Figure Resource video channel, the place for all the action figure news, reviews, tutorials and guides. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Kenner Batman Returns line of action figures released in 1992. When the Batman Returns movie hit cinemas in 1992, Kenner abruptly changed the name of their line of action figures to coincide with the name of the movie. Hence, the Batman Returns figures were released in 1992. The new line featured several interesting and cool versions of the original Batman figure sculpted in the earlier Dark Knight collection, which in turn was also a resculpt and retooled versions of the 1984 Kenner Superpowers Batman. This line also included the infamous villains Catwoman and Penguin. Catwoman got an upgrade to her sculpt, but the Penguin figure featured was a repainted version of the Kenner Superpowers figure. A Tim Drake version of Robin, who was the latest version of Robin in the comic book at the time, was also introduced in this line, even though Robin didn't appear in the movie. Kenner also released some really detailed and fun playsets and vehicles with this 1992 line, which were a huge success for Kenner. Each of the figures stood just over 5 inches in the height and had Kenner's standard 5 points of articulation on the neck, arms and hips. The figures came on similar blister pack backing cards as the Dark Knight collection. These backing cards were probably the most impressive part of the whole collection. The front of the cards featured the Batman logo at the top with a sky blue and red background. Also at the top of the card, to the right of the logo, was an artist's impression of the featured character. The bottom half of the card was covered by the blister containing the figure. Above the blister was the name of the figure enclosed and any featured accessories or action features that it came with. One of the best features in the Kenner lines was their artwork, which was nearly always highly professional and of a very high standard. If only the actual figures could have lived up to the artwork Kenner had on their packaging. The biggest downfall with this line, as with the previous Dark Knight collection, was its over-reliance on the standard Batman variations. Here's a complete breakdown of the Kenner Batman Returns 1992 collection and my thoughts on each of the figures and the vehicles in this line. Wave 1 Batman variants were Aerostrike Batman, Air Attack, Arctic Batman, Crime Attack Batman, Deep Dive Batman, Laser Batman, Powerwing Batman, Shadow Wing Batman, Sky Winch Batman, Thunderwhip Batman, then there was Bruce Wayne, Catwoman, the Penguin, and 2 Penguin Commandos, and of course Robin. There was also a second wave that only included 2 figures. Today I'm going to be looking at the Wave 1 figures, and later I will be making a video taking a look at the Wave 2 figures, the play sets, and the vehicles that came with this line. Researching these videos takes me hours and weeks of valuable time. I would therefore be grateful and appreciate it if you could subscribe below, click on the bell icon to be informed of my future videos, and smash that like button. Don't forget to watch to the end of the video in order to get your free downloadable guide on how to grade and value your action figures. Okay, so let's get on and take a look at the Batman Returns 1992 action figure line.
actionfigureresource.com. Yesterday's toys, today's treasures.
The first figure we're going to look at today is the Aerostrike Batman. The Aerostrike variation of Batman was painted solid gold with black highlights reminiscent to the Tech Shield Batman from the Dark Knight collection line. The paintwork was well applied with little to no bleeding or overlapping on the figure. This version of Batman could fly through the air and attack the enemies of Gotham City. The figure also came with ultrasonic armor that clipped onto his torso, a removable cloth cape and a rocket launcher that clipped onto and attached to his arm. The launcher came with missiles that loaded into the spring-loaded launcher and were fired by pressing a lever at the side. The next figure we're taking a look at is the Air Attack Batman. With its white and black design, he looks like an Arctic camouflage soldier. He also had a yellow belt and a touch of yellow on the Batman chest logo, and a removable cloth cape. The paintwork on this, because of the camouflage pattern, was difficult to apply, but here it was near perfect. He was armed with camouflage artillery chest gear that had really cool laser rays, wing missiles, and an infrared scanner that moved to cover his eyes when in place. The chest gear slid over his head and snapped into place at the waist and chest. The wings on the gear could be removed and attached in reverse positions. You could also attack villains below by dropping the wing missiles. The infrared scanner and laser rays can also be moved into attack mode. The third figure is the Arctic Batman. The Arctic Batman has a white body, black boots, black gloves, a black mask and cape, black shorts, and a gold-coloured belt. There's also a hint of gold on his chest emblem. The colour scheme, and thereby the paintwork, is fairly straightforward, and therefore was well applied and with very minimal bleeding or errors. The figure came with freeze-proof polar armour and an ice blaster weapon. The polar armour fitted into place over Batman's head and clipped onto his waist, and had a transparent helmet that fitted over his head. The ice blaster is a bulky white weapon with a soft end that you squeeze to fire a jet of water at his enemies. To load it, you place the ice blaster tip into water, without the projectile of course. Then you squeeze and release the rubber bulb to fill it with water. Insert the missile into the ice blaster, clip the weapon to Batman's arm and squeeze the bulb to fire the missile and water at all of Batman's foes. Next we have Deep Dive Batman. The Deep Dive Batman is Kenner's idea of a Batman that could chase his enemies into deep waters. The figure had a yellow costume that resembled a 1990s scuba diving suit. Also, he had black boots, a black belt, a black cloth cape, but how or why he would be wearing a black cape underwater is beyond me. Despite the absurdity of this figure and its colours, the figure actually looked very good, and the paintwork was well applied with little to no bleeding or overlapping, except in some places on his legs. The deep dive figure came with black attachable scuba gear, with breathing equipment and air tanks that slid over his head and clipped onto his chest and enabled him to breathe and gave him high visibility underwater. He also had two flippers or fins that clipped onto the side of his boots. The best accessory this figure came with, though, was his underwater turbo sub that Deep Dive Batman could fit into lying down, and there were two handholds at the front he could hold onto. It also had a firing mechanism, a torpedo fitted into the front of the sub and was fired by pressing down on a small button at the front of the sub. For a regular carded figure, this was an awesome accessory, and as a result, this figure was extremely popular and is hard to find mint on the card. Next we have Laser Batman. The laser shooting Batman had a waffle pattern silver painted suit and a removable black cape. The figure also used the same body and help sculpting as the other figures in this line, but the waffle pattern itself was molded onto the character rather than painted. He came with a purple radar dish missile launcher with a bat emblem molded into it that fired missiles and had two movable parts. The radar dish gear fitted onto Batman's back. This figure was an awesome addition to the Kenner line, particularly as the waffle effect on his suit made him quite unique and stand out from the others in not only this line, but the Dark Knight collection also. There was also a laser blade vehicle in this collection that was made to go with this figure, but was sold separately, and I will be reviewing this along with the other vehicles in this line. The next figure is the Catwoman figure. Catwoman was sculpted wearing her catsuit as in the movie. She comes with a whip and taser gun as accessories. The sculpting and paintwork in this figure is superb, with a very good likeness of Michelle Pfeiffer, who played Catwoman. The detail and paintwork on her face is particularly good, with excellent detail especially on the eyes. Her outfit is very smooth and shiny with detailed stitching and patterns on it. She also has a special whip action with her arm. With the whip in her right hand, you pulled back the hand and released it for the whip action effect. The whip was a very soft, flexible black rubber type material. Then there's her taser gun, which fits into either arm with a C-clip and launches a projectile when you press a button. The missile or projectile is connected to the gun by string to prevent it being lost. Overall, this is a very nice figure, and it was great to finally have another adversary for Batman to fight after the Joker from the Dark Knight collection. The only real downside of this figure is that she was fairly uneasy on her feet and difficult to stand up unaided due to the slightly bent stance she was moulded in. The next figure is the Penguin. This figure of Penguin is dressed in a ceremonial tuxedo with a top hat and gloves. The tux is black, but there are traces of red on his hat, bow tie, and his inner shirt is pure white. His umbrella is also painted in a similar red, black and white pattern. The paintwork and detail on this figure, as with most of the others, is superb, but he bears no resemblance to the Penguin from the movie. This is because this figure, as with many of the Kenner figures, was a repainted and retooled version of the Penguin from the 1984 Kenner Superpowers line. The only differences are that the Batman Returns figure had no knee articulation and had a hole put in his back to attach the umbrella launcher into. The Batman Returns Penguin also had his eyes painted in, which the Superpowers figure didn't have. The Penguin's blast-off umbrella launcher has a dual purpose. Firstly, the launcher can be attached to Penguin's back to facilitate a quick, high-flying escape over Gotham City's busy streets, similar to that of the Sky Escape Joker in the Dark Knight collection. Its second use is as a launcher, which can be clipped onto Penguin's back. The launcher has a lever on the side to fire the umbrella at his foes, typically Batman or Robin. The Toy Biz Penguin had a similar mechanism, but it didn't work anywhere near as good as this one did. Next are the Penguin Commandos. Each pack came with two variants of the Penguin Commandos, a grey penguin and a black penguin. In the movie, the Penguin had an entire army of loyal Penguin Commandos at his disposal, so Kenner released a pack with two Penguin Commandos, one grey and one black. Each penguin had a different backpack. The first was yellow with black tiger-like stripes with two rotating guns and a mind-controlled headset that fitted over the penguin's head. The second backpack was grey with red stripes. This backpack was armed with two plastic rockets that could be fired from the top of the launcher by pressing a lever at the side. This pack also had a mind control headset that fitted over the penguins' heads. The penguins had articulation on their heads, their wings and feet. The head swiveled from left to right, and their legs could also be rotated a full 360 degrees. The wings on the grey penguin were stretched out from the penguin's body and could be rotated fully round, but they couldn't be folded back against the penguin's body. The wings on the black penguin, however, were moulded against the penguin's body, and like the wings on the grey penguin, could be rotated a full 360 degrees. These penguins were very cute, detailed and well made, giving a nice touch and adding authenticity to the collection by allowing you to buy multiple packs to build your own penguin army to help out the penguin in his battle against Batman and Robin. The next figure is the Robin figure. Although Robin didn't make it into the Batman Returns movie, although it was rumoured he was going to be, he did make it into the Kenner collection. The colour scheme and design for this figure is taken from the updated Tim Drake design that featured in the comic book between 1990 and 2006. He had olive green pants and sleeves with a red waistcoat. He had a painted gold belt and a gold on black R emblem on his chest. The detail and paintwork is generally very good on this figure, although a little sloppy on his arms. He had a long cloth cape that is attached by a seed clip around his neck, similar to Batman's cape. This cape was black with an inner yellow lining. He had black boots and a black face mask that completed this iconic look. The sculpting is well proportioned with a slightly muscular body mold. Robin also came with a large grappling hook with a launcher. The grappling hook inserted into the top of the launcher and was fired by pressing a button on the side of the launcher. The grappling hook could then be fired and secured in position. The rope was threaded through the pack so Robin could slide up and down it when pulled taut. This was one of the few Kenner Batman figures that wasn't a repainted or retooled Superpowers figure. There was also a Jetfoil released in this line and sold separately. Again, I will be reviewing these with the vehicles from this line. The other figures in this line were re-released figures from the Batman The Dark Knight collection and featured exactly the same figures, molds and painting. The only difference between the two was that they were repackaged using the Batman Returns packaging. These figures were Crime Attack Batman, Shadowwing Batman, Skywinch Batman, Thunderwhip Batman and Powerwing Batman. On the secondary market, these figures can vary immensely in price depending on their condition, whether loose or mint on the card. When researching these prices, I checked many different online auctions and retailers as well as offline shops. So, in no particular order, this is the current pricing for these figures. Please note that these prices were correct at the time of filming, but are subject to change due to the volatility of the market. Also, please bear in mind, these prices are for informational purposes only and are not an offer or solicitation to buy any of these figures at these prices. Okay, so the first one we're going to take a look at is the Aerostrike Batman. This one sells mint on the card for between $10 to $35. Loose, he sells for between $9 to $15. Next is Air Attack Batman. The low price for this figure is around the $10 mark with a high price of $13. Loose, he sells for between $9 to $15. Arctic Batman has a starting value of around the $11 mark and a high price of $20. Loose, he has a low price of $4 and a high price of around $6. Deep Dive Batman has a low price of $12 and a high price of $23 mint on the card. Loose, he sells for around the $15 mark. Laser Batman has a low value of $17 and a high value of $25 mint on the card and around the $15 again loose. Catwoman has a low value of $5 and a high value of $22 mint on the card and loose sells for between $5 and $13. Penguin sells mint on the card for a low price of $12 and a high price of $66. Loose, he sells for between $5 and $18. Next is Robin. Robin sells for between $14 and $35 mint on the card and around the $7 mark loose. For the re-released Dark Knight collection figures on Batman Return cards, you have Crime Attack Batman, sells for between $45 to $50 mint on the card. Shadowwing sells for between $36 to $50. Skywinch Batman, between $20 and $35. Thunderwhip for $20 to $45. A Powerwing sells for around the $25 to $30. And Bruce Wayne for $14 to $35. Please note, these prices are only for mint on the card figures. This is because the loose figures cannot be distinguished between the Dark Knight collection figures and the Batman Return figures. Therefore, the prices for the loose figures are exactly the same as those for the Dark Knight collection figures. For the prices loose on those, you can see my Dark Knight collection video. Don't forget to take a look at my other videos. The next one I'm going to be looking at is the Kenner Batman Returns Wave 2 line, which included a Hydro Charge Batman, Jungle Tracker Batman, and Night Climber Batman. I will also be taking a look at the 16-inch Batman. Also check out my video covering the Wave 1 playset, which were the Batcave Command Center and the Arctic World Race and Chase playset. I will also be taking a look at the Wave 1 vehicles and the Wave 2 vehicles. Don't forget to download your free guide on grading and valuing your action figures. Don't forget to check out all my other Batman figures listed here.
actionfigureresource.com. Yesterday's toys, today's treasures.